Great. Right, and welcome to the second episode of Series 2 of My Next Guest Bartender. I am really excited about this one. This is about how to raise finance for your bar, and I have a very special guest next to me. He is one of the original founders of Be At One and current owner of Locke's Bar in Covent Garden, Steve Locke. Welcome to my brand new sofa.
Exactly. Very nice.
How you doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. I have a couple of facts here that I pulled off a website, if you don't mind me running over. Be At One opened in Battersea in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Was funded by car loans and credit cards. It currently goes through 1/2 ton of mint every month.
I don't know about currently.
Okay.
It probably did. It probably did when I was there.
And when you sold, you had 33 bars nationwide.
Yes.
That's a pretty big achievement.
Yes, it wasn't an overnight success. I mean, that took 20 years, but yeah.
Okay.
Those are the figures.
So this episode is all about how to raise investment. So if me and you were going to open up a bar, which would be awesome, how much equity would we be looking to give away to a finance partner, do you think?
Well, the technical phrase is as little as possible.
Okay, right.
What a lot of the guys, when they're looking for investment, what they're looking to do is to make as much return on their capital as possible. So they want to put as smaller amount in as they possibly can in order to maximise the return on that. So I think it all really kind of starts with a real kind of clear roadmap of what you're trying to build, and then it's a negotiation really.
And is there any kind of formula that you can almost recommend to work out what the equity is worth to begin with, or is it literally just the amount of money that you put in, that I put in, and Joe Bloggs puts in, whatever the percentage works out at, or is our experience and our concepts more valuable, or is it just a case of let's just
No, I
figure
think
it
so.
out?
I think so, and I think it's quite interesting. When we first took investment from Piper, a private equity firm, we'd been going for 13 years, and the amount of money we raised as a result of that wasn't really in proportion to the amount of profit in the business. I think they were taking a view on what it was going to be. It didn't break down quite as much as is a multiple of profit. And also the way they structured the deal, it wasn't as if they gave us all the money up front into cash. They have different mechanisms whereby they put the money into the business as loan notes, which means that money gets repaid as soon as the business is sold. So it kind of hedges their risk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it a little bit easier for them to get to a slightly higher number. So there's no kind of hard and fast rules. But I think as an operator, the thing you need to be focused on is control. Is what does it look like in terms of day-to-day operation? Anybody who puts money into the business tends to want to have some kind of say of what's going to go into the business. They're possibly going to want a seat on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I've only ever had one private equity investor, and they were very good because they came from an operational background. That Piper invested in us. The guys who set that up made their money when they first set up Picture and Piano, which you know quite well.
Very well.
Which they developed that concept, grew it to 7 sites, and they sold it to Marston's, I think for £20 million. And on the back of that, they set up a private equity firm. Now, what was the reason that kind of appealed to us? When we went to market, we kind of got a number of offers from different private equity firms, but that story kind of resonated with us, and they were very much into consumer type products, so there was a kind of empathy there, and we thought that they would bring some kind of nuances that a lot of the other private equity firms probably didn't at the time, whereas a lot of the private equity firms are kind of what they call sector agnostic. They don't really care. They might invest in bars, it might be a clothing brand, it might be technology, whereas Piper at the time were very much focused on consumer-facing brands. And so they kind of understood that space, they understood how the market was moving, how to kind of measure trends. And so it kind of, the relationship built, to be fair, it built over 2 or 3 years before we did the deal. And so by the end, we went out to the market and we got a number of different offers. And arguably there were some better offers in terms of price.
Cash, yeah.
But it doesn't just come down to price. It comes down to to your question, who is the best partner for you. And
that's my next question.
Sorry. Okay.
That's all right. Keep going.
I know I'll start monologuing.
I don't need to ask you. You know what? You can carry on.
And I think we chose the right partner. We were with those guys for 7 years, and we did some great things together. And I think that is the big thing you do need to decide when you're with an investor. Thank you very much. Is you're going to have to sit around the table with these guys for X number of years, and do you want somebody who's going to sit there and not say anything, not going to contribute in any way? What do you want from that kind of relationship? And being really clear on that is really important, because they'll put the money in day one, and you will spend that money pretty quickly, but that investor will sit with you right until the end of the process.
So you started in '98, you sold in 2018.
Yes.
So you just said 7 years, so Piper came on board in 2011.
2011, yep.
Yeah, so then 98, 2008, so you've had 13 bars in 13 years, is that right?
Let me think. So we opened our 12th site the day they invested. We opened our Monument that day, and then over the next years we took it from 12 sites to 33 over the next 7 years.
Yeah. So it's effectively double the rate of openings.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think probably, I think one of the cliches is that, taking private equity money is almost like putting rocket fuel in a business. And it does, I think it certainly worked for us that over 13 years we built the machine. And as some of us here were back in the early days, you're kind of learning how you do it and how you open the sites. But by the time they invested, we knew what we were doing. We knew how to put the foot down and build a business. So we took it from 12 to 33 in a relatively short time. But that's because of all the work that had gone in before then.
And did you have other partners? Was it just you, Reese and Lee to begin with?
Yes.
That site?
Reese's brother was also involved as a sleeping partner.
Okay. But that was it. It was purely cash flow that got you through the first 10 or 12 sites.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's pretty epic.
Yeah.
What else? What can go wrong with business partners? I mean, it sounds like you've had an amazing relationship with your three effectively best mates, and then Piper as well. Any examples or stuff that you've heard of where business partners haven't quite worked out?
Yeah, all the time. That's how it usually ends, isn't it?
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a quick story. So when we first opened up Kalukale, I was looking for business partners, and it's so important to pick the right person. It's not just about, like you say, it's not just about the cash on the table. And I had several meetings with a friend of a friend who basically, after about the fourth or fifth meeting, said, look, I'll give you what you want. I just need a space or a table for my wife and her friends to drink champagne on Saturday night. And I was like, oh, God.
It's going so well.
Like, no, that's just not going to work.
Really?
Yeah, it's just not going to work. That's not how I'm going to, I'd love to take your money, but not under those conditions. That's just never going to happen.
That's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it?
It is, because you can't go into the operational side of it on the understanding that this table here or that table there might have to be reserved all night for one of the partners' wives who might just rock in, drinking champagne and trying to impress her friends. So,
well, I think you did the right thing there by actually finding that piece of information out at that sort of stage.
Well, it took a while because we were just constantly pressing. Why do you want to invest in a bar?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? It's not just about the return on investment. What is it? Because you can invest. The guy was pretty well off. He had some money. We went out to his driver picked us up and took us out to his house in wherever it was. And it wasn't until about the fourth meeting that we actually got this bit of information out of it. It was almost like he just wanted to not have to deal with her on Saturday night, which is a terrible thing to say. And I'm pretty sure he's not watching this.
What are you to deal with it?
Yeah. So what are investors looking for then? What do they need?
Well, judging on your last comment, any number of things, I guess. And I think that is part of the appeal. When you're talking to professional investors or like private equity, venture capital, they're pretty straightforward in what they want. And I think one of the things that before we did the deal in 2011, we went through a process in 2005 because we met some guys from Grant Thornton. They were trying to build a leisure department of their business, and so they said, what we'll do is we'll put together a business plan for you, with a view that you can go out to the market and maybe raise some money that way. And so we were like, I'll give that a go. We had 4 sites at the time, and for like £30,000, they put together this 5-year business plan. So it was a great process. And as part of that process, we kind of presented to different banks, different VCs, PE firms, that sort of thing. And what it kind of really highlighted in our minds was how little we knew, and how poor we were at really kind of getting a message across. In fact, the guy who put it together for us, I remember we'd spent months putting this business plan together, and we got to the point where we were about to go and pitch it. And so we went and sat in his office, and he says, right, bit one, tell me about it. And we kind of went, and kind of blagged our way through it. And he sat back and he said, fantastic business, one of the worst pitches I've ever heard. So I was like, well, thanks for your honesty. But it was a real kind of opener for us. That we worked so hard to build this business, but you need to be better at actually articulating what exactly it is that you do. Anyway, at the end of that process, we actually changed banks, which was quite fundamental, and that really kind of kicked our growth on. But we didn't do the private equity thing. But what it did focus on is we just needed to understand that world better. And so we made it our mission to go out and meet as many private equity firms, as many venture capital firms, as many corporate finance houses and banks as we possibly could, and just get out there and just tell our story. And so what you get really good at is your elevator pitch. You know what I mean by the elevator pitch? You've got
90
1
seconds
minute
to pitch it, otherwise the CEO is going to walk off.
Exactly, and people glaze over. And so it's about, we became very good at get people's attention and say exactly what it is, what you did. And so we became quite, practiced at that. Don't know if we were good at it. 2005, 2006, and then by 2011, so we were a few years after the financial crisis, and although we performed really well, our bank funding was just where it used to be kind of a well-oiled machine, just like it gave me a bit more running through treacle. Just trying to get the money out of the bank was just getting a bit more difficult, and so we thought, well, if we're not careful, this is going to slow down our development, just as we're hitting this rhythm whereby we're ready to take off, and so we thought, now is the time, because we don't have to do it, but maybe we want to do it, and that's when we did it.
Do you need that investment on board to go to banks, or could you have gone to the banks yourself without the investment?
Yes, you could, and
right.
I guess this is, I don't know for anybody who's watching this thinking they want to open their first site. I would say the most important thing is just, if you can borrow it, because
without a personal guarantee.
Without a personal guarantee, even better, yeah.
I had a conversation literally on this couch yesterday, and we started talking a little bit about funding, and the conversation developed, and all of a sudden it was like, but do not put your name, your house, any of your own personal assets against
Never
it.
Bet the farm. No, absolutely.
Sorry, interrupted you.
No, but you're absolutely right. So it's, we managed to do that, get to 33 sites with no PGs. Just, it always came up. They'd always ask.
Yeah, of course they would.
But we would always respectfully decline. But if you can borrow it, because the real value is owning those shares. That retaining as much of the equity as possible, because when you sell it, that is where the real value is.
Yeah. So nose to the grindstone for 20 odd years, and then sell keep the whole lot, split it between 3 or 4 of you?
Possibly that would have been nice. And so you and I have had the conversation before. I mean, when we sold a portion to a private equity firm when we were 13 years old as a business, so we're quite established, been doing it a while. And I look back now, if you had your time again, knowing what I know now, I could have gone about it in a slightly different way. So,
well, hold that thought, because
calm down.
You've obviously got to page 20 of my list already. Are there still people out there looking to invest in hospitality? Because I think there's probably a number of worried people out there who are looking for finance. They've got no idea where to turn to.
Yeah. Well,
are you too far out the game?
I think I'm not an authority. I was a bit nervous when you invited me to this. It's been a while since I've raised any money from any any
you've
source.
Got a great story though.
Hopefully it's not too out of date today. But it's we grew Be@One really through very low interest rates, and the world has changed dramatically in the last 2 months, and that does concern me. I like to think what's happened in the last 24 hours, there's a bit more stabilised stabilisation in the economy, and hopefully interest rates will kind of level off at a decent, sustainable level. But it is a concern. That said, like you, I've worked in this industry for a few years, and every now and again something comes along and it's the most cataclysmic event in the world. 15 years ago it was a smoking ban. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but everyone thought that was the end of the world, because you can't smoke in bars. Well,
it kind of made it was nonsense where you're asking people to leave their table or their seat and go outside and then come back in again, and all of a sudden within about 15 minutes we just got over it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there'll always be blips in whatever part of the economy that they're looking at, and whether that's a financial crisis or a pandemic or whatever is going on in Ukraine, and then all of a sudden things will slowly get back to normal. And what we spoke about yesterday as well is one of the, I'm going to choose my words carefully, one of the better parts of going into either a recession or even just a financial downturn is that everything becomes a little bit cheaper, especially when it comes to property, rent-free periods, things like that you can actually take advantage of. So I think we'll always see blips, but for the diehards among us, there'll be opportunities. Might not be straight away, and you have to bide your time a little bit. But I think there'll always be opportunities for either us to grow or people to invest.
Absolutely, and I think that's the important thing, that having been through quite a few of those blips over the years, those events, they're always a level playing field. They're not just targeting Steve Locke or Richard. They happen to everybody. And what it means is you just need to be the best in class. And if you're the best in class, then guess what? The bottom of the class are the ones that are probably going to suffer, but you just don't want to find yourself there. And I think what it does do is it opens up a lot of opportunities. You say rents, rates. A lot of incumbents who have kind of got a little bit lazy, they'll suffer, but that will open up opportunities. And so it's almost like a bushfire. It's quite dramatic when it happens, but it kind of stimulates new growth. What's always interesting when you go to New York, because of the way lots of bars in New York just kind of turn over, and that's why it's such a hotbed of creativity, that things aren't just there forever and ever and ever. Things have their life, and then they have to be replaced by new stuff, which is good.
And I think a sad fact of sad, I mean, I suppose in our industry it might be a better thing, but a sad fact of an economic downturn is that statistically over the last 100 years, whenever there's been an economic downturn, people have smoked, drunk and gambled more because of the situation that we're in. We're in the drinks industry, so the better we are.
How do you sleep at night?
Oh, very, very easy.
Very expensive bed.
After about 5 Negronis, it's pretty easy. Okay. Should everyone have a 5-year plan, an entry and an exit strategy?
No, not if you don't want them.
Okay.
But I think if you want to achieve anything, in a business, then certainly yes. If you want to open a business, you certainly should have, because it will help you get there, but also how do you know what you're going for? What a plan gives you is a real concise, clear vision of what you're heading for, which just helps you employ people, helps you design your menu, it helps you market your business. Everything must concurrently go to the same point. And if that doesn't exist, you might have X number of people together in a room. They all think they're heading in the same direction, but they're all just a disparate group, just doing different things. And the thing that sticks in my mind was JFK apparently said we're going to put man on the moon back in 1960. And the guys at NASA were like, what? No idea how this was come together. But 9 years later they did it. But what he gave them was just this big, hairy, scary goal that everyone could kind of hang their hat on and just kind of go for, and it happened. And I think just having we've all worked with lots of bartenders over the years, and I think one of the biggest tricks that we did at Be@One was we had the audacity to go, we're actually going to do it, and we're going to pinpoint a site, we're actually going to do it, because if you don't, you're another bartender who plans to have their own bar but doesn't actually do it. But the key to it is actually making that point, committing to it, and do you know what? Failing, getting it wrong. Nothing's more important than that, but being willing to give it a go and fail, because that is just the first step on actually achieve it.
I think that's also that's a state of mind as well. You know, you could see it as failing and it's a complete waste of time and what the hell have I done, or you could see it as another way of how not to do it.
Yeah.
And if you see it as effectively, I've done it this way and it went wrong, but if I did it that way, next time I'll get it right. It's effectively, you're constantly learning of how to open up your first place. Did you always have that exit strategy in mind as you got to a certain number of bars and that was it? Or was it just, let's see how we do over the next 2-3 years, let's see how we do over the next 2-3 years, and then actually we're at a point now, because we've got investment on board?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, when we first opened up, we'd left Fridays, and we'd been bartending for 8 years by that point. And it was...
I would have loved to have seen you behind a bar on Fridays.
No, you wouldn't.
You and Lee.
With braces on. I'm sure there's a video somewhere I can...
I'm going to look it up right now. Bella,
exactly.
Where are you? Let's find that, please.
Yeah. Let's not do that. Yeah, but after we'd done 5 years at Fridays, and we done the training team. We travelled and done quite a lot with it, and we come to the point where we are kind of our mid-20s, and it was every bartender's dream is go and do it ourselves, and it was we need to give this a go and just try it, and so we did, and it kind of worked. But literally, every step of the way, you're waiting for somebody to come and take it away from you. You're thinking, is this really going to happen? But the first one went really well, second one not so well, and we kind of bumbled our way along. But it took a while to actually get a bit of confidence that actual fact this was your rightful place. We had imposter syndrome, just as most people do when they step up into doing something they really want to do. So it took a while to believe it.
I kind of share the same experience almost, because my second place was, it didn't go well. Third place was actually much better, but opening the first place as a young bartender, bar manager, didn't have any kids, didn't have a mortgage. If it all went tits up, I'd have lost a bit of money and I could go work for someone else. And that's the mentality I went into. Just go for it. And if it doesn't happen, it hurts pride-wise and money-wise, but you can always earn more money.
But interestingly, you said the second one didn't work, but you didn't go and work for anybody else. You actually pushed on and went on again, didn't you?
Yeah, but that's, right now I can't see much, if it all went wrong, I've got no PGs on this place. So, if it all went wrong, it would hurt, but there's no way I could go work for someone else again. So I'd have to somehow pick myself up and then start all over again. And I still own the name Caluga, so, maybe that it would be an international something or other. But you're now an independent again, on your own, I presume.
With my wife.
With your wife. What are the advantages and disadvantages of going really, really super big versus being independent?
Well, interesting. I think after we'd sold Beer One, we'd kind of, as much as I'd had my partners for 20 years, and we were very much of the same ilk. And then you take on private equity, and after 7 years of that, by the end of the process, you find yourself sitting in board meetings with a lot of bored, but just listening to lots of people. When in actual fact, I know the answer here. So there's all a few people are saying a few things, but you're like, and I think by the time we did it for 20 years and it worked really, really well. But I was really eager just to go and do it myself. And even, we've been, Locks was 3 years old last week.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've done well to be here, haven't we?
Well, 2 years of that was lockdown. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been tough, but it's just great to actually have that kind of freedom. The flip side of that course is in your lower moments, it's really, really hard. When there's nobody else there. I mean, my wife is my partner, and so she I know much the same way that you are. That she's got to put up with it when I cry home and cry myself to sleep at night. That's the one thing I do miss is not having particularly Lee and Reese there for 20 years or so. How tough it got. There was three of us kind of shouldering, doing it on your own. That was a lot tougher. And if I didn't have the sort of experience I did have, prior to Locks, I think I might have found it a little bit too much. But of course, I've been around a little while now, so you do have the confidence that however bad it is, tomorrow will be a better day.
Yeah, always. How do you feel about crowdfunding?
Well, I've not tried crowdfunding. I suppose one of my.
Shall I explain it?
Go on.
So crowdfunding, well, obviously you know what crowdfunding is, but from my experience of looking at crowdfunding, it's a great way of exposing a lot of people to your brand. They might just, chuck in 20 quid, 30 quid. They might want to throw in a couple of £1,000. And if you can get 500 people in, there's 500 potential customers that will bring all their mates going, look, I've just invested in this bar. Do you want to come down? And whatever the rewards might be, like a glass of champagne on arrival or free pizza or something
like
like
a marketing
that.
tool.
It is a great marketing tool. The other thing that I've found with crowdfunding is that often the value of the business is overvalued. Have you seen anything like that?
Well, I don't know. The round about the time that we were shortly before, the year before we sold to Stonegate, we were looking to do a private equity deal at that time, and that was when Brewdog took their investment. So it just that was an illustration to me that whatever I thought I knew, I didn't.
I think
really know quite
did Brewdog raise? Does anyone know this? Raise 8 million for like 4.5%. Yeah, well, that's a great tagline, They managed to raise so much money. They almost had too much money.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to open up enough bars quickly enough. And now they're in a situation that there are a lot of Brewdog bars closing in remote-ish areas that just, they opened them, couldn't really sustain the forecast of what was projected, and now they're in a position
cutting back again.
I mean, obviously this is hearsay and I don't know enough about it, so it's just an opinion, it's not fact. But yeah, I think there are certain examples of crowdfunding where it's just...
Well, they made it work for us. I remember we were trying to get Beer Runaway at that time, and in the Sunday Times they suddenly got a £1 billion valuation for their business based on what they... rather than we were
trying... Is that based on projections or purely
I think
on...
it was because the amount of equity they sold for the price they got for it, it meant the value of the whole business was worth about £1 billion. Excuse me, around that time we were trying to hit £50 million, and we had the same level of profit as they did. We were like, maybe you should have gone into products rather than trying to sell cocktails. But it was, hats off to the guys. They've
done really well.
They've done really well.
They've done really well. No, you can't knock the finances
no, it's
behind
amazing.
In hindsight, which is a lovely, wonderful thing, is there anything you'd do differently?
I've gone to brewing. No.
It all went perfectly to plan?
Listen, man, I'm still here. I think, as you said earlier on, that in the beginning, wasn't a perfect. There wasn't a plan. So it was. The thing about hindsight is, yes, you would have tweaked it and done things slightly differently, but you're saying that with so many years.
But that's the beauty of hindsight, right?
Exactly.
If I'd have slightly done that, would that have been different, or would it have been the same? Who knows?
Yeah, but I think I'm happy with where we are. I'm happy with the decisions that have been made, and I suppose my relationship to failing has always been quite healthy. That I understand that with every bloodied nose, with every dent, every scar, there's a lesson that comes from it, but actually just makes you slightly better at doing what you're doing.
It's the way that you deal with failure or setbacks. If you don't even call it a failure, you just call it a setback or
a lesson.
Yeah, exactly, exactly that. Well, we've talked about Brewdog. Have you heard of Bacchanalia? Bacchanalia is the reason I'm asking about this is we want to talk a little bit about return on investment, because obviously whatever anyone who wants to invest, they'd want to see a return on that investment. So I went on the caterer this afternoon. Bacchanalia is looking to hire 180 staff. It's in the old Porsche garage on Berkeley Square. They're buying 2,000-year-old antiques. They are employing London's first grape feeder, and their budget for opening...
What's a grape feeder?
Oh, it's someone who goes around and feeds people grapes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
You not got one of those?
He's sat right there. And the proposed budget is £80 million.
Right. Okay.
So I always...
I'm out.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
me too. But the standard, I suppose, period to break even would be about 3 years per site, roughly. So the profit for each year, just on my rough maths, is what, about 27 million? I mean, how does that sit with you as a
human?
Well, as a human, as you know, as someone who understands investment, like from an investment point of view, who's going to take that kind of risk?
Well, it's interesting because, as I said about when we took investment, you talk to private equity firms, they're pretty binary in their approach to things. And I think when we went through our process of going to meet as many PE firms and corporate finance houses, what you learn through doing your pitch is the questions you get back every time, without exception, are the same. You know, so these guys, they all paint themselves as doing very, very different things, but the way they think and the questions they ask are very, very...
What kind of questions are they asking?
What's the barrier to entry? What's the capex requirement? What's the return on investment? And, what's your break-even point? It's very, very formulaic. They've obviously learned at their business school or they're doing their masters, but it's...
Is it a box tick exercise?
It is, but the questions just come and they are very, the next question that's coming.
Yeah.
Because those guys want to, particularly private equity, and put their money in day one. 5 years later, they want to triple their money. That's fair enough, that's the model, and that makes it very easy. When you've got a billionaire who's opening restaurants, what they're looking for is something completely different. Is the
tax dodge.
Don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know why I did that when my microphone's right on me.
It's a very high-risk strategy, I think, Richard.
Don't worry, we'll edit that.
We'll edit that. But they obviously want different things, don't they? I can't remember his name, the American guys who bought into Soho House. Yeah, the Soho House has got a valuation, but it's based not so much on the profitability of the business, but it's about the membership that's been built there. That what can be then, if you harness that, and what you can do with that.
Because I suppose that expands 34 Mayfair, Annabelle's, Scott's, Sexy Fish. There's plenty of
Ivy.
members. Is that still the Ivy as well?
The Ivy chain, yeah.
Yeah. So that expands the I suppose the membership potential, right? We're coming to the end. One last question, I think. What's next for Locksbar? Are we going to go to 13 sites, take on private equity, go to another 35 and then sell?
Maybe not.
Right. Okay.
I think one of the, having done that, what I'm enjoying at the moment is, being the master of my own destiny. And I do want to grow Locks, and I think we've been a little bit hampered, as we all have for the last 2 years, but we're kind of over that now, and we've now got the structure to actually open some more sites. So I'm looking for more sites.
In London?
Yep, in London.
Yep.
I think probably all in London for the next 5 years or so.
Okay.
But I'd like to get to 8 sites over the next 5 years.
Right.
That's my plan.
That's 5 years.
Past that, I don't know. It would be possibly. It might be about doing a private equity deal, and maybe
Don't you just want to retire and sit on a beach?
That'd be nice.
No,
nice
you'd be bored, wouldn't you?
No, exactly. I think you would get bored. And it's funny, when you and I first met, it was shortly after I'd sold BL1. And it's quite strange, when you have done something really intensely for so many years, to suddenly stop. It was very difficult.
Did you take time out?
Not really, no. And in hindsight, maybe I should have, but that was very difficult. That when you go from running a 33 strong business that you've grown for 20 years to suddenly not have that one day. I know it's a cliche, but it's so true. The phone stops ringing. You're not as involved in things that you were the day before. And so that's why I kind of got back into it. But I say I'm enjoying doing what I am now. I'm enjoying the kind of the freedom that I can do what I want to do. And of course, because I'm not trying to grow a business for private equity, every pound that I make, stays within the family. So there's not the same sort of desire. I'm just enjoying doing what I'm doing. So I want to grow that. But I think the brand is strong enough that maybe there might be 30 one day. But I think at that point, other people may be running it for me.
Good idea. Steve, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Steve Locke.
Thank you, Richard.
Is who's got questions? Anyone? Oh yeah? Oh, you took notes. Of course you did. Yeah?
Okay.
Go on then, Rory.
Amongst the 33 bars that you sold, how many did you shut? Because you said you sold 33 bars, right? Or you got to 33 bars.
We sold 33 sites to Stonegate, but yeah, we probably disposed of half a dozen over the 20 years. Even the second site we opened was an absolute nightmare. The first one kind of went off like a frog in a sock, and then we opened one a mile away from Wandsworth Town.
A frog in a sock.
Yeah,
What's that?
You're right.
Right.
But yeah, the second one was just an absolute disaster. So all the things that went well in the first one didn't, it was a real kind of wake up like, so location's important, write that down. People, all these different things which we got right purely out of luck on the first one suddenly became apparent. And we managed to get rid of it, but it took us best part of 2 years to get rid of it. And we had this situation whereby one was making money and the other one lost as much money as it made. Mm-hmm. So you're working really hard just to kind of break even. But before we sold the second one, we managed to open a third one in Richmond for £30,000, and that made money immediately because we'd learned those lessons. So somebody had 2 bars making money and 1 losing money, and then we got rid of this, and it's like,
the anchor that's weighing you down.
Exactly. But I mean, that's 2001. We opened a second site. Businesses took us 3 years to get to the point where we're like, all right, this is what Beer One's about. This is what people want. And then, of course, we kind of opened another site I said when we opened Lyceum in Covent Garden, that took 18 months. So you're like, oh man, this is hard work. And then we opened one in Balham, and that was slow. And then we opened Hammersmith, and that was, so we're suddenly like, oh man, we weren't replicating the success. And then when we took private equity investment, we kind of opened some wrong sites. But it's part of the process that some of these frogs don't turn into princes. And some that you kind of work with, long enough they'll come around. But other ones you just.
How long would you give a site before you said, look, enough's enough?
I think sometimes you know pretty quickly, and you think, is this going to get there? And if it's not, then you want to try and do something about it sooner or later. I mean, that's the classical thing about the Goldman Sachs boys. They'll make an assessment pretty quickly, bang, and they just go, just take the hit. Because what you do is you might have a site which makes, I don't know, 300 grand a year, or you've got this one that doesn't really work and maybe makes, breaks even or loses a little bit of money. But the time you spend on that one, it's management time.
The reward for effort is frustrating.
Exactly.
Right?
It's best just to take the hit. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Do you still remember your elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch.
Do you still remember it?
No, I've not used that for a little while, I've got to say.
I think it's quite good when, obviously, if you've done something for a very long time, you've known people, but then you have to remember this started always somewhere.
Yeah, we all started the same way. I think that one of the things that Be It One which really kind of, because when your elevator pitch needs to hook people, that you can't just suddenly disappear. Anyone talk to tech guys? Tech guys just don't kind of get that. Tech guys really struggle to articulate what they do in real layman's terms. And Be It One, we just focused on something called the 5-60-30. And it was when people come to Be It One, you get 5-second eye contact. And you might not be served within 5 seconds, but within 5 seconds, somebody will be right with you, give you a menu. So with that 5 seconds, then you relax. 60 seconds to make a drink, 30 seconds to get the change back. And basically all that service standard, everything we did was just to hit those kind of marks, because what it did is just focus. Do you have recollection of this?
You forgot one thing. You've got to maintain awareness of your station at the same time.
Oh, right, there you go. but as part of the 60 second to make your drinks, isn't it? They all come subserviently. That because what you're really focused on, the guy who comes to your bar is that guest. They are cash rich and time poor, and everything you need to do needs to be focused on them doing what you did. And so when you're talking to banks and investors and everybody else, they kind of get that, and you take them around the bars and you show them like 5 seconds. Right, we're going to walk in the bar, see how quickly you get eye contact. They go, oh, this is great. And I still see people now and they say, I went out for a tour with you around your bars once, and you've ruined going to bars now for me. Because suddenly it gave them a level of awareness about when you go to a bar, somebody should give you eye contact. Somebody should shout hello to you even though they can't serve you. You should get your drinks quickly. You should get your change back quickly. Those sort of real kind of.
Oh, you remember the cash days? When
cash?
People paid in cash, giving you change back.
Just wave your phone. Yeah, no, the olden days. This is a 560 now, isn't it?
Rory?
Yeah. So how did you get in the faces of so many investors and sort of like private equity firms and that sort of thing? And then once you were there, what were the key points of in the presentation that you wanted to sort of amplify in your speech?
The thing for us was it's an old it's like a sales technique. If you get in front of one person and you kind of build that rapport up over a certain amount of time, it's just almost as you're putting your jacket and you're finishing, you say just one thing before you go. It's like a Columbo moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, just
while
one
I
more
get
thing.
you. Is there anybody else that you think might be worth us meeting? And it's just almost like a kind of a very subtle way as the meetings kind of end, and they might go, I tell you probably should meet, and they'll probably give you more than one person. Write down those names, follow up, and make sure you get at least one more link. And so it literally was as simple as that. And lots of times you'd be given 3, 4, 5 names, follow them all up, but don't ever let any of them slip. Also, a big thing is when you're meeting people, just afterwards, just keep the connection, but also just follow up the connection with an email and just kind of a bit of clarity about what you've spoken about. So you're just maintaining that kind of connection, and then you kind of build a bit of awareness of your brand. I think so. Just leading on from that, I mean, that part of the reason we did it was in order just to get people to understand why our business was different and better than anything else. And through doing it, because then those guys will be talking, and then the guy from Barclays might be meeting some private equity guy. Oh, yeah, I met the guys from Bit One. They did this thing, and they did 5, 6.
They all know each other. It's like the bar industry, just for banks. Like all bankers know each other from one way or another.
Exactly, particularly because they move around as well, don't they? They kind of work different places. And so suddenly, when we actually went to the market in 2011 to raise finance, it was, you're pushing an open door because so many people knew about you because they'd either spoken to them or they knew somebody who you had spoken to. So again, a bit like your crowdfunding idea about the marketing idea, you're just kind of getting your message out there subtly all the time, just kind of planting those seeds, and they come up.
And when you're presented, you're in front of them, what are the key points about the business or about the business plan? If you don't open the business, you've just got a plan. What do you want to tell them first? Like, what's the specific points about sort of the back of house, the idea, the concept? Like, what do you want to focus on?
For me, it's got to be what the customer gets. The customer's got to be front and centre of the concept. It's all very well what you're doing at the back, but it's a bit like what you just said about the 5-60-30, is, maintaining your experience. You know things about two-handed bartending and bounce pouring that probably 99% of bartenders don't understand. But I'm, talking to investors about that, there will be a point in an investment meeting where I will say, well, if you bounce pour, well, it's a classic example. So I've said this in nearly every investment meeting I've done, is how do you, one of our real kind of key KPIs was the amount of revenue per labour hour we get. So we spent £5,000 training bartenders. People go, how much? Yeah, but what that allows us to do is that a bartender will bartend with 2 hands. And when I say bartend with 2 hands, if they're making a Black Russian, which is 1.5, and 3/4, and they're bounce pouring, they go bubble 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they go, wow. They suddenly see, all right, well, I wouldn't have understood that, I wouldn't have seen it. But when you explain that kind of level of science to it, they're like, that's how you manage to sell 4 when most people can only sell 1. And so you're kind of suddenly then, you're giving your kind of technical background knowledge, but it's fitting into the 60 seconds to the 5-60-30, and it makes it, you put it all into layman's terms that it's just easily understandable.
I love the fact that you have to speak in layman's terms to a banker. That's brilliant.
They're
Do you miss bartending?
No.
Fair enough.
I miss the buzz of it, but it's quite funny that I remember working at TGI Fridays. I was 20 years of age, and all the guys on the bar were 20, mid-20s, early, late 20s, and I was the baby of the team. And part of me still thinks the same way. And when I get in the bar now, I still kind of, but dude, you are 30 years older than a lot of the guys here.
You were bartending before they were born.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's not a good look anymore.
Guys, thank you very much. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Good.
Cheers. Well done.